Welcome to Off-Duty Engineer. I am Alan. This channel is for some of my scale modeling projects, plastic aircraft, wooden ships, and dioramas to display them. This is a summary of the scale model build of the Land Rover 88-inch Series 2A. The Landie is an Australian specification with bush bar and other body modifications as used in the 1960s and 70s. This is presented in a diorama set in Vietnam circa 1966 with two Australian figures of the time. The Landie and diorama are in 1:35 scale. First, the photos of the final result. The diorama story would be a scene set in Vietnam, Long Tan, in 1966. The scene would be two forward scouts for Australia's Delta Company. Delta Company was the first to move into Long Tan in 1966. The two Australian soldiers would be a section leader and a communication signalman. They would be stopped on the side of the road, consulting a map and communicating via radio to base. Transport would be a Land Rover Series 2A with a 30 Browning fixed on the dashboard and a 50 cal in the back and two FN rifles at the ready. This diorama celebrates the Australian forces in Vietnam in the late 60s. Lest we forget. We attended a full main event at the War Memorial in Canberra. It is quite moving, a grounding experience, highly recommended. Here is some interesting history of the Australian Land Rover of the 60s and 70s. This is a brief photo essay of images taken from the very informative document of Paul Handel and forwarded to me kindly by David Moira. I acknowledge and thank both sources, much appreciated. I used some of these images as references for the build. The Series 2A Land Rovers entered service with the Australian Army soon after the model's civilian introduction in 1961. They had the longest fleet life of any Land Rover in the Australian Army service, with many of the specialised vehicles serving until 1991, a period of some 30 years. The Series 2A models were characterised by a number of uniquely Australian modifications, the most well-known and easily identifiable being the cut-away front mudguards. Mudguards were cut higher and wider as well as being angled rather than rounded types of the civilian vehicles. A bush guard was fitted to the front of the vehicle. Twin fuel tanks were fitted with a filler on each side of the vehicle. The spare wheel was carried on the bonnet with alternative locations on the side or in the loading bay. Next is the details of the Land Rover Kit. This Landie is an AK Interactive Scale Model Kit. Kit number AK350013 in 1/35th scale. ScaleMates indicates that the kit is from 2023 with some new tooling and parts for a few kit variations. I found this to be a high quality modern kit. It was a pleasure to build. The only issue for me was that some of the parts are just too small to handle. The full size Landie is a small vehicle, so in 1/35th scale it is a small model. The kit has 220 plastic parts plus photo etch parts. This is a large number of parts for such a small model. There are paint guides and decals for 6 options. There are left and right hand drive options in the build. There are 12 sprues, including the clear sprue. The 5 tyres are rubber, a good surprise. A small photo etch sheet and a decal sheet are included. There is also a resin printed canopy for the back. A nice touch, but I could not use this. The instruction book is a large format and in full colour, and 40 pages long. The instructions are very detailed, images from 3D CAD. The images are a lot larger than the actual model. The detail on the engine, transmission and chassis was right down to the smallest parts. The quality of the plastic was excellent, no flash, no obvious ejector pin marks, very little cleanup needed. I found the smallest parts were just too difficult to handle. I did complete the whole model chassis in detail with painting, even though this would not be seen in the final intended diorama. I also found that many of the larger parts like the body panels did not have definitive locating points and edges, so it was difficult to glue these parts, hanging all in mid-air as the glue dried. Next is the building of the Land Rover Kit. Well, hi there. Another day, another model. I've completely cleaned out my workspace, shelving, everything. I've actually recreated the camera and microphone arrangement here. I have a brand new Canon R50V, the video version of the R50, mirrorless interchangeable lens camera. and that is sitting above me now. I've moved the webcam to the front instead of on the side like it used to be. I've got my little remote control here, so I can actually zoom in and zoom out. It's got its autofocus going. So yeah, let's see how that goes. The first step was to clear my workspace, understand the instructions, inspect the parts and sprues to assess quality. The Landie will need to be an Australian specification with bush bar and other modifications as used in the 60s and 70s. Okay, I've done a start to the Landie. I'll give you a show. So I've got all the sprues done, separated out. I'll label each sprue so it's easier to find. It's that over there. Then I had to decide, still have to decide what format the end's going to be. So this is for the Australian Defence, so it's a little different to the one in the box. So I have a choice. I can either do it in the standard Landie. Note the changes to the bodywork a little bit. It's a bush bull bar in front, or a bush bar in the front. So you can either have it like this, open, or here it's got the canvas top, but the kit has only got a hard top on it. Or do I go for something with an action like this with no top on it at all, get some figures, put a gun on it, and do it in this form? So I still have to decide that. But anyway, start on the kit. Beautiful kit, I must say. Lovely manual. I've done this little start over there. Each spring is 2 parts, four springs, it's 8 parts onto the chassis, and that's the start. Okay, update on the Landie so far. I've completed the chassis with the motor, the gearbox, and the transmission, and the drive shafts. So that's what I've done so far. So in the book I'm up to this point, step 16. I must say some of the parts are really, really small, like almost bordering on ridiculous, sub 1 millimeter, and you've got to put 2 of them together to make another sub millimeter part. So it's a little tricky, but yeah, it got done. So now the next part there is to continue with the right-hand drive steering mechanism and so forth. The bush bar needed to be built from scratch. I used the images as reference and made a one-to-one line sketch of the bush bar. I used some old sprue for the outer rail and some sheet cut to strips for the rest. Each section is cut, fit, pinned into place, glued and wait to dry. The result was quite good. Next was to modify the body panels to the Australian specification. I used the images as reference and marked up the body parts, ensuring that left and right panels were the same. The front wheel arch is squarer and the front cut is much higher. The transmission sections were assembled, added to the chassis and hand painted. The parts are very small and the location is not very positive, so this was delicate. The exhaust was particularly challenging to align and fix. All parts fitted, and I was pleased with the kit and the results so far. Okay, time for a quick update on the Landie build. So there, I've done quite a lot on the chassis, the exhaust pipes in, fuel tank from last time, rear bumper, all the steering mechanisms are in. Yeah, all the steering rods and so forth, that's all in. So this is basically ready for the body to come on. I have the back bumper done on there, but that'll have to go green. The body parts were fitted and glued together. This was tricky in that the parts are in all directions with no good location points or edges to work with. It took a bit of time and frustration with a few irritating fingerprints on the surface to deal with. Overall, the plastic kit was very good and exact, very little cleanup required. I did a dry fit to the chassis to check. Here's the body. It took some time to do. Parts are very difficult to locate in this kit, but eventually got it done. You've just got to hold the parts in 3D space. All the steering mechanisms in, the pedals for right hand drive. I've prepped the seats as well. but I haven't put them in yet. Okay, I have actually fitted this to the chassis. It fits nicely. The PE parts on this are ridiculously small. I mean, like sub 1 millimeter. So I haven't used many of them. You can see the grill there is a PE part. Looks very nice. The mesh. Okay, one thing's interesting. On the Australian version, the two lights in the front there are one above the other because of the bush bar, but on this model they're next to each other, so I've left them next to each other because to change that is a bit tense. Okay, so that's done, and it's and I've sprayed it. It's got grey primer on it, so I glued it all, let it set, and then put grey primer on it. Here are all the body parts now prepared to complete the body and chassis. Okay, catch up today. Basically finished the Landie. Give you a quick walk around. Zoom in. There we go. Yeah, it's a nice view. Left the bonnet off. There's that brush bar or bush bar. Left the windscreen off as well. Left the doors off. There you can see the cutout. The cutouts that are done for the Australian version. I have the back tailgate in but not glued. I have one back seat in and the 3 front seats. You can actually see the steering mechanism down there, the dashboard. You can see the 4 gear knobs at the bottom there. Remember the one that I had in the Defence Force had 4 gear knobs. Okay, the lights are in. Decals. Very few decals. Number plate is one of them. Rego. Same Rego front and back. Yeah, and then I gave it a brief coating, acrylic matte coating on it. A quick look ahead to the diorama. This is the original, really rough sketch of the idea of the diorama. This will dictate the Landie body configuration. Third-party parts that were procured were 2 figures, resin from call sign models, Australian Section Leader Vietnam, Australian Signalman 1969, complete with bush hats, perfect. Fuel cans, a collection from AFV Club, to use 3 fuel cans on the back of the Landie. Armament, collection from Tamiya. Need the 30 cal LMG for the dashboard and the 50 cal to have in the back of the Landie. So that I'll quickly just look at the paints that I've been using, techniques. The airbrush I used, zoom in. The airbrush I used the black over there. I have the 075 Model Air. I used for the seats, I used this earth brown Model A, Vallejo. This is US olive drab olive. Okay, 043, that's for most of the body and everything else. And this silver, which is 063. The silver is very nice. It hand paints very nicely too. All of these I just hand paint with them. These for hand painting, I just use these little brushes. Tiny little ones. Okay, and then I use a milk bottle top inverted, and I just put 2 drops in there, and I use that. For the guns, I will use this lock lube. which is just graphite powder. Just rub that onto the guns and it makes it a nice, like, half shiny, half matte finish. Other paints that I use for hand painting, there's this red, which is just a Tamiya, the yellow from the Tamiya, and I use this clear orange for sandpaper. I have this SMS sticks, which is nice and hard, so for flat it's nice. Then for not so flat or edging, I use these AKs. They are really nice, these AKs. I've got them all. I've got the coarse, that one there, coarse, the fine, coarse, medium, fine, and extra fine. These, I find them really, really nice. Let's get another set of these. And for glues, I just use the Rebel Contact out of the dripper. I use the Tamiya Extra Thin, of course. Use lots of that. This one's getting towards empty. I did knock it over once, so otherwise it would last 10 years. So I use the extra fine, extra thin, plus this one. And then for CA cement, I just use this. This is Icky Sticky or something similar. I thought I'd do a quick intro to these two figures that I received. So I ordered these ones. Zoom in again. Call sign, so it's an Australian section leader in Vietnam. The other one, the side one, that's a Signalman. Is the head, arm, torso, second arm, lower body, feet. There's a little map that he's holding, and some accessories and a gun, probably an Australian FN. On the Signalman side, there's his head, again with a bucket hat, torso, different, arms as such, his boots, and of course the accessories at the bottom, and another FN. So I thought, well, if he's a Signalman, maybe I can use something else. So I found this little kit that I had lying around, and I looked at this radio. So here's the radio. I thought that might look pretty good. I'll put it there, the back of the Landie. Like that. Oops. Yeah. With the tailgate down, maybe on the tailgate. So that's an option. Yeah, so I just thought I'd intro you to that. So I'm going to assemble the two figures and then decide on the diorama. Next is the building of the diorama. A paper layout is used for one-to-one planning. I decided to have a base and a backdrop. The base would be live materials like grass, gravel, rocks, weeds, and a road sign post, barbed wire fence. The backdrop would be an image of lush Vietnamese forest with palm trees. This image was generated by AI, Windows 11 Copilot, after a few text description passes. I decided to add a few palm trees to transition between the backdrop and the diorama base. A road sign was also AI generated. Long tan was in 1966, so I used long tan 66 for kilometer or miles. Alright, so I've completed the two figures in resin. I'll show them to you zoomed up in a mo. So I've just planned the diorama, and that's what this is about. So I've planned a square 220 millimeters wide by about 190 millimeters deep, and a back rise of about 160 millimeters at the back there. This will be cut out of this blue structural foam. The base, the back will just be masonite or MDF board. So I've just got this at a slight angle with a road going through there, which will be on sand. On the side will be grass. I've got grass here. I've got some weeds, tufts, grass, which I'll use as well. I'll put two palm trees at the back. The backdrop, I'll find an image that I can stick onto the back that's suitable. The Landie over here, I've gone with the communications, not with the faulty Land Rover. So I've gone, the bonnet will now be closed. This guy's driving his communications radio over there. He's got another one on his back. And this is the chief guy. He's a squadron leader, and he's got his map and he's pointing to over there. So I'll have a picket fence, or sorry, a barbed wire fence running along the back there, and a signpost over here with long tan. I'll basically take this image and reduce it down and stick it onto the top, that signpost over there. So just to give it some relief, over here along the front, I'll slice that away and pack it full of rocks like that. I've got more. Basically pack this rocky edge with rocks on this side. I'm not going to paint them or anything. I'm going to use them natural like that. The base of the diorama was done next. Blue XPS, a structural foam 30mm, was used as the base. The backdrop was 3mm MDF board, glued together with Gorilla Glue. Note that contact adhesive melts the foam, so no go. I used a set square and clamps to ensure that it dried at 90 degrees. Overnight to set, then fill the gaps with the hardware filler as needed. Ready for shaping in the next step. Plan the layout now onto the diorama base. The grass and weeds would be from the Army Painter. The rocks in the foreground would be small stones from the garden. The gravel would be building sand. Once shaped, the base would be painted with grey acrylic household paint to hide the blue base and wood backdrop. Back inside, the dia base is placed into a shallow baking tray because the gravel and grass is going to be messy. White PVA wood glue is used for the gravel and for the grass. Gorilla Glue is used for the rocks. The two soldier figures were completed next. The quality of the figures was really good, realistic clothing and accessories. The resin is quite hard to glue even using CA super glue. I drilled 1mm diameter holes up each leg, 20mm deep to go through the boot into the leg. I then cut 40mm lengths of 1mm brass rod and glued and inserted them, with 20mm rod out the bottom to hold for painting and to insert into the foam dia base to locate the figures later. Figure painting is definitely not in my skill set. The figures were primed grey. Belaga Model Air is used for hand brushing. This is thin and applies easily and not too thick. Milk bottle tops are used to hold the drops of paint and mix a little colour. Very fine brushes are used. Colours are uniform, was olive drab green. The green runs into the creases and darkens there, creating good colour texture. Boots were black. Belts and webbing were different browns. Flesh, to me a flesh colour, but I darkened it a bit. Hair a bit under the bush hats, and the eyes were white dots. The last main item was the barbed wire fence. I procured the Army Painter barbed wire 4 meter length and 135 scale. The height and spacing was calculated to scale. The fence posts were dowels drilled for the wire, then stained with 2 shades. A jig was used to hold the fence post and thread the barbed wire. Very intricate. Then the fence was installed onto the diorama, the wire pulled quite tight and CA glued to hold into place. The wire was weathered with a few colours of rust. A few touch-ups and all done. Here is a summary and the photos of the completed Vietnam diorama. This was a very satisfying build. The build was quick, took about 3 weeks working on and off. The AK Interactive kit is new from 2023, all fitted well, a good quality kit. The other third-party kits were also very good quality. The Land Rover build brought back memories of my time in the South African Air Force in the mid-70s. I was allocated a Series 2A, which taught me a lot about driving. Mine had a transmission fault that caused the main transfer box to slip out into neutral at high speed. The way to re-engage it without stopping was to double clutch at max revs, then the passenger kicked the gear lever back into engage again, with a good jerk on the Landie transmission. The 2As were tough vehicles. We also had a few new Series 3s, but not nearly as robust as these Series 2s. This diorama celebrates the Australian forces in Vietnam in the 60s. Lest we forget. Here is a spoiler for my next model. I plan to build an English electric Canberra high-altitude bomber aircraft that was deployed in Vietnam in the 60s. It will be in Australian camo colours and RAAF insignia and decals. I still have to find a suitable kit, probably an FX kit in 1/48 scale. I have to decide on the diorama to show it. Interestingly, the South African Air Force deployed to Canberra as well, but they were retired by the time I was in the South African Air Force in the mid-70s. You can see all my scale model builds on YouTube at OffDutyEngineer 57. Thank you. See you next time. That is all. I hope that you enjoyed this. Please follow, like, subscribe, etc. See you next time. Thank you.